You know, that roof over your head, it feels like such a basic, fundamental need, right? I mean, it's shelter, it's security. But today, we're going to trace its absolutely wild journey, from being a simple tool for survival to becoming one of the most complex and, yeah, sometimes dangerous financial assets in the entire world. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. It sounds completely backward, doesn't it? But this one sentence perfectly captures the bizarre, upside-down world of our modern housing market. We're all told that owning a home is the key to stability, but the reality? Well, it can be the exact opposite. So yeah, how is that even possible? That's the huge question we're diving into today. How did we get to a place where the very thing that's supposed to give us shelter and security could actually become a source of massive financial risk? The answer, it turns out, is a story that goes back thousands and thousands of years.
So to really understand where we are now, we have to go way back. I mean, all the way back to the very beginning, to a time when a home wasn't something you owned at all.
For our earliest ancestors, staying in one spot was basically a death sentence. Think about it. If you're a hunter-gatherer tribe, a permanent camp just makes it way easier for predators to find you. Shelter was temporary, it was communal, it was absolutely essential for survival, but it was never a possession. It was just a shared tool for staying alive. But then, as societies got more and more complex in places like Mesopotamia, the need for rules became pretty obvious. And for the very first time, we see the idea of property being formally written into law. And this changed everything. And that brings us to the Code of Hammurabi. Now, you've probably heard the phrase an eye for an eye, but it was so much more than that. It laid out the first ever blueprint for property law with super detailed rules for renting land, paying tenants, and sorting out disagreements.
And the level of accountability was just staggering. This law from the code is extreme for sure, but it really shows you how seriously they took the construction of a home. It was a vital part of the community, and if you did shoddy work, well, you paid the ultimate price. A little different from today's liability clauses, huh?
And this reveals something really fundamental. Even with all these new laws, Babylonians didn't own their homes the way we think of it. Property was still deeply, deeply tied to the community. You couldn't just build whatever you wanted. The idea of a purely private asset, it just hadn't been invented yet. Okay, so the next big leap forward, this is where the game truly changes. This is the moment when land, for the very first time, becomes a tradable asset. The Romans came up with a legal concept they called dominium, and this was a full-blown revolution. It was the first system that let a citizen own a piece of land outright, backed by the full power of Roman law. You could buy it, you could sell it, you could trade it. It was yours. This single idea turned land into an asset. And the Romans used this new tool brilliantly. I mean, why would you fight to defend the empire? Well, because you literally owned a piece of it. Soldiers were rewarded with land, which gave them a real stake in society after their service was done. This created this powerful, stabilizing force that encouraged loyalty and participation all across their massive empire.
But of course, the concept kept evolving. Fast forward a few centuries to when William the Conqueror took over England. He used the same basic idea, but with a twist. His famous Doomsday Book cataloged every piece of property to centralize his own power. So the whole purpose of land as an asset shifted. In Rome, it was about loyalty to society. Now it was about making sure the lords and dukes were loyal directly to the king. It became a cornerstone of the whole feudal system.
For centuries, not a whole lot changed for the average person. But then, an invention came along that would democratize the idea of the asset and just change everything all over again. So, in the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a seismic shift. People started flooding from the countryside into the cities to work in the new factories. This created a demand for housing that was just unprecedented, and the old ways of inheriting a house or renting just couldn't keep up. They needed a new financial tool. And that tool was the mortgage. It's so simple, but so incredibly powerful. For the very first time, a bank could lend you a huge chunk of money to buy a house. Why? Because the house itself was the security. If you couldn't pay, the bank could just take the house, the asset, to get its money back. The social impact of the mortgage was just enormous. Debt, which for all of history was seen as this moral failing, was suddenly rebranded as good debt, an investment in your future. For the first time, a regular person could actually move to a new city for a job and buy a home, creating a truly dynamic housing market.
And that brings us roaring into the 20th century and right up to our own time, where this whole system of housing as an asset got pushed to its absolute breaking limit.
Just look at this chart of Tokyo's growth. After World War II, urbanization just exploded on a scale humanity had never, ever seen before. In just over 100 years, the city's population grew more than 10 times over. And the same story was happening in big cities all across the globe. The logical thing to do was to build up, right? Build skyscrapers. But here's the catch. While those skyscrapers could house millions of people, very few of the people living inside them actually owned their apartment. Ownership started to get concentrated in the hands of landlords, corporations, and city councils, which created this permanent class of renters.
And with homes now being one of the most valuable assets on the entire planet, woven into the fabric of every bank and investment portfolio, well, the stage was set for an absolute disaster.
The 2008 financial crisis was pretty much the final act of this entire history. Homes stopped being treated as places to live and were seen almost entirely as speculative chips in a global casino. Banks were bundling up risky loans, basically betting that house prices would just go up forever. And then the bubble burst. Just think about the incredible, tragic irony here. The very same concept the Romans invented to stabilize their society, home ownership, was now the very thing that brought the entire global economy to its knees.
Which leaves us with this final, nagging question. As more and more people move away from big cities, work remotely, live with family for longer, are we consciously choosing a more communal, more fulfilling life, kind of like our ancient ancestors? Or is this all just a coping mechanism for trying to survive in a world where our basic need for shelter has been completely swallowed by the demands of the asset?